is going on? Hello, DFS community. Welcome into the Week 2 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is episode number 64 of the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine game scripts and player outcomes. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337. Go give me a follow over there. You can also find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks, can't believe it. Already 2024 season active here. We're going to get right into it, going from number one game on the main slate all the way to the worst one. And then we're going to get into the island games on Sunday night and Monday Night Football and give you a little bit of additional information to make those start-sit decisions and your lineup decisions a little bit easier moving forward. So with that being said, we'll kick it off here with Detroit and Tampa Bay as our number one game heading into the first Adjusted Line Play report of the season. All right, folks, we're going to get into it. Detroit, 7.5 point home favorites, a 51.5 Vegas game total here. Detroit at home, 29.5 team implied total. Tampa Bay at 22 for their team implied total. So pretty high totals there. Detroit is the number one on the slate in terms of team total. Tampa Bay at 11th. This is a full slate, by the way. So getting into the away team, Tampa Bay, number 5 in offensive pass protection. Detroit, number 23 in defensive pass rush. Remember, these are the adjusted sack rates. Tampa Bay, not taking a lot of sacks. Detroit, not getting a lot of sacks in situations you'd otherwise expect to see. Again, caveat to all of these. This is week 2, so this is the first week of information. As we go throughout the season, this will get a little bit more accurate. Right now, we got small sample size issues to worry about, but don't be too alarmed. It's still pretty good even at this early stage. So with that being said, the offensive pass DVOA, number 2 for Tampa Bay. Detroit, number 15. This is telling me Tampa Bay should be able to pass the ball pretty effectively. Looking at that run game, offensive run blocking, Tampa Bay once again bad, number 30. Offensive run DVOA, number 29. Detroit, middle of the pack, if not close to top 10 there at number 12. And stopping the run in 16th in defensive run DVOA. So telling me Tampa Bay is going to struggle to run the ball on the ground. They're going to need to move the ball effectively through the air, and they should be able to do so. Now, in these scenarios where they're going to be pretty effective passing the ball, but struggling running the ball, those are times that I think, hey, there might be some field goal opportunities for this Tampa Bay team as they move the ball effectively and then maybe stall out on a 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. They just can't run the ball and they get stopped and their drive stalls out, and then they have to bring the kicker in to get their points for that drive. With that being said, I do fully expect Tampa Bay to be very effective passing this. Obviously a high game total. Haven't looked at Detroit's offense yet, but I do expect this to be a high game total, or probably pushing that 50-point game total as well. And Tampa Bay should be pretty successful through the air. So Baker Mayfield in play, Chris Godwin in play, and Mike Evans obviously in play. And then if you need a deep dart throw, Jalen McMillan should be good. Cade Otton did run a ton of routes last week, so he is a super deep dart throw at tight end. Getting into the Detroit side, their offense, number 15 in pass protection versus 12 pass rush, pretty much a stalemate there. And pass DVOA for Detroit, number 24, Tampa Bay at 20. Again, slightly in the favor of Tampa Bay's defense here, but one of those kind of stalemates where I say studs eat in these scenarios. Now, the big question is, we already know Amon-Ra St. Brown, very much a stud. Had a little bit of a hiccup there in week 1. Do we see Jameson Williams start taking over? I like him in this particular matchup. I think it's going to be a back and forth affair, especially if Tampa Bay is moving the ball and scoring. Detroit's going to need to keep up. Those studs will eat. So we're going to be looking in the pass game for Sam Laporta. We're going to be looking for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I think Jameson Williams also in play here, and Gibbs will get his share in the pass game as well. Getting into that run game, though, that's where the juicy spot is for Detroit. Number 2 in offensive run blocking, Tampa Bay there at 26 and stopping the run. Detroit number 2 in run DVOA on offense. Tampa Bay 11th in run DVOA on defense. So heavily in the favor of Detroit. Detroit should have no problem running the ball, and then they're going to be kind of middle of the pack passing it. So I expect Gibbs and Montgomery also to have pretty solid games here. With the back and forth affair, I wouldn't be surprised to see Montgomery score a touchdown in this. I do like that as a prop bet over over a half receiving or rushing touchdown in this. I would not be at all shocked if he scores. And if I had the ability to set a lineup where it was touchdowns only, I think he would be on the higher part of that list for touchdowns this week. So Detroit offense, pretty much all of your usual players. I would be interested in DFS. Tampa Bay, all of your usual players. And then you're looking at McMillan and Kate Otten as your deep play options. Just for awareness, the pace of play is going to look a little wonky here for some of these. So offensive pace overall for Tampa Bay is actually really slow. And then Detroit's offensive pace overall 18, not, kind of middle of the pack there. But some of these you'll see offensive neutral situation, pace of play 31 for Tampa Bay, but they're number 6 in offensive pace of play while leading. There's not very many of these numbers, so some of these situations, there's only a handful of teams who actually led by more than plus or minus 8 points, if that makes sense. As you can see, Tampa Bay blank here, so their offense of pace of play while trailing by 7 or more points has not even happened yet this season, so that's why it's blank. And because of that and the nature of how they are scoring, the blanks are actually handled as the best option for some of these pace of plays because they're sitting at 0 seconds per play, while the rest of those teams that do have numbers end up being in the 20s. So we can kind of ignore the pace of play outside of the overall pace of play, and every team should have neutral situation pace of play because they have found themselves in that situation at any stage of the game. So neutral situation is basically if the score is within 8 points and it's in the first half or third quarter, as long as it's not the 2-minute drill of the first half. Any time frame in there where the game is within 8 points counts as offensive neutral situation, and that's what that is. So Detroit number 6 actually in that, so a little bit quicker. Again, number 1 game on the slate for a reason. I would not mind attacking this in DFS. They're going to be popular, but they should be very good. Getting the Tampa Bay pass side, I would prefer Baker over Goff because I think Detroit's run game will sneak a few touchdowns in there, and I think that's maybe a good way to attack it. Tampa Bay pass game with Baker Mayfield, and then getting Detroit's run game as the run back. I think that's the better of the two options. All right, getting into the number 2 game on the slate, we have Cincinnati visiting Kansas City. Another home team that is pretty heavily favored here. Kansas City a -6 on the Vegas line, so 6-point home favorites. Vegas game total pretty healthy, 48, especially in these, in this economy in 2024, 48 is a pretty good number, giving Kansas City a 27 team implied total, Cincinnati at 21. That is, Kansas City's 27 points is second best on the slate. Cincinnati at 21 is the 14th best on the slate. On that Cincinnati side, offensive pass protection is red across the board, number 24 and number 25 in pass protection and pass DVOA. Fortunately for them, Kansas City not very good, 30th in defensive pass rush, 21st in defensive pass DVOA. This is telling me one of those situations where studs eat. The defensive line is pretty neutralized, and those guys who are pretty good at getting open are probably going to get fed the ball a little bit more in these scenarios. So I do like Jamar Chase in this particular one to, have a little bit better production than he had in week 1 when he was limited in some capacity due to the holdout at the beginning of the season. So I think Jamar Chase is in play. Actually, where you get into the interesting part is the run blocking. Kansas City last year not very good at stopping the run on defense. It's showing up again here in week 2. Number 24 in stopping the run is Kansas City, and 22nd in offensive run DVOA, but Cincinnati very good, top 5 actually. Number 3 in offensive run blocking, number 4 in offensive run DVOA. So despite being underdogs, I do think that run game is going to be pretty consistently good here. Not shocked if Moss has, a game where he's getting 5 to 5.5 yards per carry. If he gets 12 or 15 of those, you're looking at a pretty solid, 60 to 70 yards rushing. If he can punch one in, he's having a pretty decent day at 12 points. Catch a few passes, especially if they're down, he'd be okay. Chase Brown, the more explosive back, but we didn't see him get as much opportunity as Zach Moss did in week 1 while Cincinnati was trailing to New England. So if I'm looking at the Cincinnati side, I do believe they're going to lose this game. So you're looking at Jamar Chase. I also think Brown a little bit less so than Moss, also an option in DFS this week. Probably going to avoid Burrow to an extent in terms of I just don't think the upside is necessarily in the pass game. I think it's more in the run game here. If they're going to get down, some of those touchdowns might end up going to Zach Moss instead of the pass game. Getting on the Kansas City side, offensive pass protection number 14. Offensive pass DVOA number 4, and Cincinnati really bad on this front. Defensive pass rush 27th, defensive pass DVOA 22. This is telling me Kansas City is going to have time to throw the ball, even though they're middle of the pack in pass protection. Cincinnati not really getting after the quarterback. Although I will say New England had the highest pressure rate in week 1. It just wasn't that Cincinnati was getting home. So, your hopes of Cincinnati defense being viable, even though you would never start them against Kansas City, probably not super good in this one. But the pass DVOA number 22 versus Kansas City at number 4, that's a huge mismatch, saying Kansas City should be very effective on a play-to-play basis. Probably not going to be getting a ton of sacks, but they might be pressured a little bit. We don't have the pressure rate in our adjusted line play report here, but pass game should be very effective for Kansas City. Obviously, we have Rashee Rice, Kelsey, and now Xavier Worthy, who seem to be viable options in that pass game for Kansas City. I'm fine with all of those guys in DFS, and especially if you think Cincinnati is going to be able to move the ball because their rush game is good and that pass game kind of neutral. And this game's going to go back and forth. Patrick Mahomes, a very healthy option. Just try to figure out where those touchdowns are going to go in your DFS lineups. He likes to spread the ball around. Not too terribly shocked if Worthy gets one and Rice gets one and Kelsey gets one in a game where he throws for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. So keep that in mind as you build those lineups. So getting into Kansas City's run game, they're number 20 in run blocking, Cincinnati 23rd in stopping the run. Kansas City number 8 actually in run DVOA though, and Cincinnati number 19 in run DVOA on defense. So telling us Kansas City might be kind of effective running the ball there. Number 8 in run DVOA versus 19. They are, above average team on this 2024 season. Cincinnati a little bit below average there. Wouldn't be shocked to see Pacheco also have a good game. This is telling me, though, that Kansas City probably not going to struggle moving the ball. It's going to be very, very effective in the pass game. Run game should also be, a little bit above average, if not significantly above average in this particular matchup. Kansas City should move the ball well. Cincinnati should move the ball okay, which could lead to, this Vegas 6-point line, and I do like these teams in terms of that. So neutral situation, pace of play, overall pace of play, Cincinnati pretty slow, even though they were trailing, which is unfortunate to see. And then Kansas City's pace of play, 22nd and overall, 16th in offensive neutral situation. Not much to glean there other than Cincinnati, especially if they're running the ball successfully. It's going to be a little bit slow paced, and that might drag the Vegas game total down a little bit. But I think these two offenses can overcome that, and you'll see that play out in the game total. I do think it could hit the over in this, especially on the Cincinnati side. Maybe getting to 23, 24 points instead of that 21, which Vegas has implied. All right, getting into that third game on the main slate. It is a late game again here. The Rams heading into Arizona. Arizona 1-point home favorites. The Vegas game total third best on the slate at 47.5. Arizona 24.25 team implied total, sixth best on the slate. The Rams 23.25, seventh best on the slate. So very close game here. Could be back and forth, close game the entire time, which is a lot of times really good for fantasy. Los Angeles Rams, the away team, 8th in offensive pass protection. Arizona 14th in defensive pass rush. Again, that is the adjusted sack rates. The pass DVOA for the Rams, 19. The pass DVOA for the Arizona Cardinals, 32, worst in the league. So this is telling me the Rams should eat In the pass game, they should be very effective on a play-to-play basis. They may take a sack or two, but nothing out of the ordinary here, and I think that's just wheels up for Cooper Kupp in this particular matchup. We saw him absorb, whatever you want to say, 21 targets in week 1 as Puka Nacua exited the game. Him and Colby Parkinson, I would be very, very, very intrigued with in DFS. I think they see tremendous volume in this particular matchup, especially if it's going to be close. On the run blocking side, I'd be a little nervous with Kyren Williams taking some of that workload if they're going to be up or favored. They're not even favored in this particular matchup, so Kyren Williams' role may be a little bit limited there in terms of running out the clock or anything like that. Offensive run blocking, number 21 for the Rams. Arizona 17th in stopping the run. And then run DVOA for Rams 18, Arizona 15 in run DVOA on defense. Both of those slightly in the favor of Arizona, which tells me that, hey, all the offensive pass production is going to be, or all the offensive production for the Rams is going to be in the pass game. So attack those guys in DFS. Colby Parkinson, I don't know how popular he's going to be, but I think he's a great option this week against the Rams. For the Rams. The Cardinals on offense, 30th in pass protection, not great. Rams 18th at getting after the quarterback. That's a pretty heavily favor for the Rams. They may be able to generate some pressure on Kyler Murray, which would lead to a few more quicker dump offs and him probably rushing a little bit more. So any rush attempt props for Kyler Murray that have him at 5 or 5.5, I would say that's the over. I would say he's probably upwards in the 6 to 10 range in terms of, rushing opportunities due to a lot of them being from the pressure from the Rams front there. In terms of pass DVOA, Arizona 16, Rams number 10 in defense. So may struggle a little bit here to pass the ball for Arizona. Despite this being a pretty popular game in DFS, from what I can imagine, Marvin Harrison Jr. may be one of those that you want to avoid. Same with Michael Wilson as a deep dart throw, or the darling small guy over there, Greg Dortch. He might be way more popular than you would expect in a week, and he's going to be a fade for me in this particular matchup, especially when you get into the run blocking. Arizona 22nd and 21st, which isn't super great. But the Rams, 31st and 31st in stopping the run and run DVOA. I think James Conner is the play you're going to want from Arizona. I would be willing to take him as a one-off, especially if Arizona is going to be in a close game script. James Conner, not scared to get, 5 or 6 targets his way either. I do see him having the best game out of this Arizona offense, and then the Rams being very effective passing the ball. So that's kind of how I would attack this particular matchup. Otherwise, I'm avoiding that Arizona pass game for the most part. And perhaps surprisingly now, number 4 game on the slate is San Francisco heading into Minnesota. San Francisco is 5-point road favorites here, a 46.5 Vegas game total, which I said is 4th best on the slate. San Francisco, 25.75 team implied total is the 4th best on this slate. Minnesota at 20.75, 17th best. Again, that's going to be out of quick math, I think about 24 total teams. So pretty rough there for Minnesota at 17. Now getting into the adjusted line play. Offensive pass protection for San Francisco can't get any better at number 1. Offensive pass DVOA number 9. Unfortunately for them, Minnesota is also green across the board, number 7 in defensive pass rush. So they are generating some sacks. The defensive pass DVOA number 3. But again, I had mentioned this is a small sample size. They played the Giants in week 1. They didn't play the San Francisco 49ers. They didn't play all these high-octane offenses with amazing weapons. They played Daniel Jones with a rookie wide receiver as his best target. So keep that in mind with those numbers. They could be a little inflated due to the small sample size. But San Francisco should be pretty decent in that regard. Played a Jets defense that was pretty solid. So Minnesota probably as equal to the Jets, and we saw what San Francisco did to their defense. The run blocking, though, is where it gets a little interesting. San Francisco actually 31 in the offensive run blocking. Minnesota's defense at 18. San Francisco number 12 in the offensive run DVOA. Minnesota number 4 in defensive run DVOA. Once again, this is against the Giants and Singletary and their terrible offense, so this could be a little inflated, but this is kind of suggestive that San Francisco might actually struggle moving the ball because they're not going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they would like to. That pass game, especially if it's under pressure, this could be a lot sneakier of a game. Not looking into Minnesota's pass offense or rush offense here yet, but just indicative that San Francisco actually might struggle a little bit in this compared to what they had against the Jets. If they're struggling to score points or move the ball, especially with the run game the way it is, that San Francisco kicker, as I had predicted before, was going to have a big game. I think he might have another big game in this one against Minnesota, especially in the Dome. They might be struggling to score in this on the road, so keep that in mind. Getting into the Minnesota side, though, very interesting. Number 7 in offensive pass protection. Number 6 in offensive pass DVOA. Again, could be short sample bias here, playing the Giants in week 1, but San Francisco number 31 in defensive pass rush. Didn't generate a lot of sacks, but Aaron Rodgers good at avoiding those, so that could be part of the reason. But San Francisco was number 13 in defensive pass DVOA, so above average for the NFL season in that regard. So Minnesota, this is looking like a big win for them in their pass game. We already saw Sam Darnold be pretty successful in week 1. If you expect San Francisco to be up in this or scoring points and you think this is a bogus line in terms of the offensive and defensive line play for their offense and you think San Francisco is going to put up points, Sam Darnold might need to throw quite a bit in this, and it looks like he could be fairly successful. So keep that in mind. We did have Jordan Addison already ruled out. So I had mentioned on Tuesday, Jalen Nailor is somebody that you should be getting off waivers. And if you're in a 14-team league, he is potentially startable this week based off of this information, especially Minnesota being underdogs and it looking like their pass game should be successful. So Justin Jefferson, number 1, and then we have Jalen Nailor as probably the number 2 target behind Aaron Jones in this offense. So in general, if you think San Francisco is going to be getting after Minnesota, it could be an Aaron Jones week 2, where we see a lot of times if that number 1 wide receiver ends up going down or that number 1 target in the offense goes down, a lot of it just ends up going to the running back. So this could be one of those Aaron Jones 6 or 8 reception games against the San Francisco defensive front just to kind of mitigate that. So watch out for that as well. Getting into the run side, Minnesota, middle of the pack, number 12 in run blocking, number 15 in run DVOA. San Francisco, green across the board on defense, number 1 defensive run stopping, number 6 in defensive run DVOA. I would expect Aaron Jones to struggle in the run game. Ty Chandler probably off your list in terms of starting unless you're in ultra deep leagues that are starting like 12 people. I'd avoid him. But I think Aaron Jones is in play if you're in PPR leagues especially. I think we might see him with 6 or 8 receptions in this particular matchup. So keep that in mind. I think that's how this game's going to end up being. It might be a little bit closer than people are expecting, especially if Minnesota's passing the ball and San Francisco struggling a little bit on offense. And here we have another game tied for 4th best on the slate at 46.5 for a Vegas game total. We have Dallas as 6-point home favorites against the Saints. 26.25 team implied total for Dallas is 3rd best on the slate, so way up there. The Saints 20.25 are at number 18 for their team rank in points. A lot of green in this particular matchup. So New Orleans offensive pass protection, number 8 and number 7. Dallas, unfortunately for them, number 2 and number 1. They should be able to get after the quarterback here, according to this. And New Orleans may be able to do a little something about that pass rush. So keep that in mind. Should be an interesting one there for the pass game. It's a little bit slightly in favor of Dallas, so maybe a little bit quicker passes for the Saints. So maybe Rashid Shaheed is off your board this week in terms of starting, unless you're in the Scott Fish Bowl and you want to start him due to all of the return potential. That would be the only option for me in terms of starting in a particular league this week. I don't think he's going to have enough time to throw the ball in this particular matchup to utilize his skill set. So might be more of the tight end, Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave show here for New Orleans in week 2. The run blocking, though, is where it's at. New Orleans, number 4 in offensive run blocking. Dallas, 27th. Run DVOA for New Orleans, number 6. Dallas, number 10. Both of those either slightly or heavily in favor of New Orleans run game. So Kamara definitely in play if they're going to be down, needing to get out quick passes. Don't be shocked if we see Kamara with 12 to 15 rush attempts and another 6 or 8 pass receptions in this particular matchup against Dallas. Especially if they're trying to mitigate that pass rush and get the ball out quick, we could see him with quite a few of those pass receptions in this game. Getting into the Dallas side, offensive pass protection number 23, pass DVOA number 23. Saints, they were playing Carolina, so take this maybe with a grain of salt, as we do have the low sample volume to deal with here. Small sample size bias. We have New Orleans number 4 on both pass rush and pass DVOA. This is indicative. Dallas not going to have a lot of time and probably not going to be very effective passing the ball in this particular matchup. Maybe one of those, despite Dallas having a high team implied total, where you pass up on Dak if you feel like this is accurate after a 1-game sample size. Especially getting into New Orleans, defensive run stopping number 5, defensive run DVOA number 1. Caveat, they did play, again, the Panthers in week 1, so this could be inflated values, similar to what we saw with the Minnesota team. Dallas, offensive run blocking number 14, number 9 in offensive run DVOA. Based off of this, I'm projecting that Dallas's run game is the more effective of the two. Again, this is based off of the adjusted line play report, which again is the 1-week sample size. Based off of this and the Vegas game total, I would be fine betting the New Orleans covering that 6-point underdog point there, even though this is in Dallas. If you are truly a believer in the offensive and defensive line, the adjusted line play report, and this being accurate after 1 week, indicative that New Orleans may dominate on defense here and Dallas struggle to score points. So an interesting one there. Not shocked if you take a flyer on Dallas here, Dallas losing, and place a bet for New Orleans to either cover that point spread or just win outright. Don't be surprised if a lot of those people in the survivor pool bet on Dallas this week and get ousted. All right, 6th highest game total on the main slate here. Giants heading into Washington. Washington 1.5-point home favorites. All the way dipped down now to 43.5 Vegas game total. Washington 22.5 is the favorite for their team implied total at number 8 overall on the main slate. Giants at 21. We've seen that a few times, but that's tied for 14th. Getting into the Giants side, offensive pass protection number 26. We have offensive pass DVOA at number 30. Not very good. Fortunately for them, Washington is one of the worst secondaries in the league. Number 27 in defensive pass rush, 31st in defensive pass DVOA. This is a situation where Daniel Jones might actually be viable in DFS in this matchup. Should have plenty of time to throw and be successful. If we have Malik Neighbors out there, I wouldn't be shocked to see him with the monster game. And we did see a lot of targets go to Wan'Dale Robinson as they were losing last week to the Minnesota Vikings to try to get the ball out quick. But I think Daniel Jones truly does have a bounce back after that Minnesota game and does a pretty good job of decimating this Washington defense. If he does not, this is really bad. This Washington defense is really bad, and you can pretty much write Daniel Jones off and expect to see maybe some Drew Lock quicker than you would expect in this season if he struggles against Washington. I don't see that happening. I think Daniel Jones is actually viable in DFS this week, and pairing him with Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson would be my top 2 choices, but we did have Theo Johnson. He clearly looks like the number 1 option there for the Giants, and he is a sleeper in terms of tight end for this week on the main slate. Getting into the run blocking side, Giants 15th in run blocking, 28th in run DVOA. Washington really good, number 3 in stopping the run, number 5 in defensive run DVOA. So if the Giants are going to move the ball, it's going to be through the air. Avoid this run game altogether. And if you're attacking anything, it needs to be probably one-off scenarios with you attacking the Giants or a Daniel Jones stack. Getting into the Washington side, they're 21st in offensive pass protection, 14th in pass DVOA. Giants, pretty bad here. Defensive pass rush 26th, defensive pass DVOA 27. I do think Jaden Daniels can do a pretty good job in the pass game here. Terry McLaurin maybe sees good opportunities here in this particular matchup. The unfortunate thing is we have fake sharp Cliff Kingsbury running this offense. It is very stagnant. There's almost no motion before, pre-snap, no motion at the snap, which really puts the defense in a bind and opens up a lot of stuff. Kingsbury just doesn't do that stuff. It sounded like Terry McLaurin spent 85% of his snaps out wide, not moving, just playing one spot at the one side of the field, and at snap, not moving. So unfortunate for him, and he might actually struggle this season after looking like he could be pretty good. Cliff Kingsbury doesn't look like he's learned anything since he was last calling plays. Getting into the run blocking side, though, number 7 for Washington there, 22nd in the run DVOA. Giants actually kind of flip-flop there. They're 21st in stopping the run, so a big, heavy favorite there for Washington in the run blocking side. But the defensive run DVOA is way better for the Giants at number 12 versus 22 for Washington. So run game probably kind of a neutral, if not negative, there with the run DVOA. I'd expect Washington, if they're going to move the ball, they're going to be passing it as well. So both teams seem to struggle there with that aspect on defense in terms of covering the pass. So if you're going to attack anything in DFS, go that route for your teams. All right, 7th best game total on the main slate at 41.5 is Cleveland going into Jacksonville. Jacksonville got the home bump at 3 points for their Vegas favorite. They are 22.25 team implied total, 9th best on the slate. Cleveland down at 19.25 for their team implied total, 20th best on this slate. Getting into Cleveland side, 31st and 32nd in the pass protection and pass DVOA. Absolutely brutal there. Jacksonville 15th in the pass rush, 23rd in pass DVOA. Well, Cleveland did struggle in the pass game here. It looks like that might continue a little bit. They might be under a little bit of pressure from Jacksonville, but perhaps a little bit more successful than they're otherwise perhaps used to against this Jacksonville defense, but still not a good matchup. The run blocking, similar story here. Cleveland number 6 in offensive run blocking looks good. Unfortunately for them, in their one good category that's not red on offense, Jacksonville green there at number 6 as well. Run DVOA, though, for Cleveland, 23rd, and Jacksonville 8th. Suggestive that Jacksonville could also be stopping the run here based off of this in the 1-week sample size. Truly looks like Jacksonville defense is in play against Cleveland in this particular matchup, so keep that in mind. Jacksonville defense, maybe one of those sneaky options for you this week. Jacksonville offense, number 32 in offensive pass protection, not very good. Cleveland number 10 in defensive pass rush. Looks like they should be able to get after the quarterback. Trevor Lawrence taking some sacks, so don't be surprised if you see Myles Garrett with a few sacks in this game. I'm not sure what his sack, if it's at 1/2 or 1.5. I'm assuming it's going to be at 1.5 sacks for his prop line. Wouldn't be shocked to take the over there and see that hit. In terms of pass DVOA, though, Jacksonville pretty effective at number 3, Cleveland at 11. This is indicative that maybe Jacksonville is under pressure, but they're going to be actually pretty effective when they do pass the ball. Somebody like Brian Thomas, we saw last week, be pretty effective with his targets, so don't be shocked if it continues in that particular fashion. Obviously, we have Christian Kirk there as well, but really not expecting a ton out of this particular matchup, especially if Jacksonville's under pressure. They're probably getting the ball out a little bit quicker, and it could be more of an Evan Ingram type week where they're dumping the ball off to him and trying to get it out of their hands a little bit quicker. On the run blocking side, that could be Jacksonville's savior here. Number 8 in offensive run blocking, Cleveland 19th in stopping the run, Jacksonville 20th in offensive run DVOA, Cleveland 26th. We did see split carries, so 12 apiece between Travis Etienne and his backfield mate there, Tank Bigsby. So don't be shocked if that continues into this one. Jacksonville was in a pretty close matchup most of that time last week, so Tank Bigsby, maybe the surprise of the season if he comes out and still is taking half the carries here from Mr. Etienne. So I don't like a ton of options here in DFS if I'm being adamant, unless it's like the Jacksonville defense. Nobody really inspiring anything for me outside of that. We got another game here tied at number 7 at 41.5 of the Vegas game total. Vegas heading into Baltimore here with an 8.5 point home favorite for Baltimore. They are a 25 team implied total, which is the fifth best in the slate. Las Vegas at 16.5 is ranked 26, which I believe is the worst on the slate. Getting into the Vegas side, 27th in pass protection, 22nd in pass DVOA. Baltimore 19th in pass rush, so they're getting after the quarterback. Vegas taking some sacks. We could see that continue, but then the pass DVOA a little bit in the favor of Vegas. Baltimore's defensive pass DVOA number 30 after week 1 playing Kansas City. Getting into the run blocking side, Vegas 17, Baltimore 13 in stopping the run. Vegas 31st in run DVOA, Baltimore 27th in run DVOA. So a little bit in the favor of Baltimore in this is more of a studs eat scenario. I don't think Vegas has any studs. I think they just struggle running the ball in this. Their best bet is going to be to try to pass the ball, but be under pressure. So probably a little bit quicker passes here. It could be a Bowers and Myers type week where Devontae Adams only getting 4 or 5 receptions in this matchup. All right, getting into the Baltimore side, the one that's probably going to be a little bit more fantasy friendly. We see them at number 3 in pass protection, Vegas 29th in the defensive pass rush. So that's the adjusted sack rate. Baltimore not taking sacks, Vegas not getting sacks. We do know they have Crosby, though, who can get after the quarterback. The pass DVOA, though, Las Vegas, middle of the pack. Baltimore, number 11 in offensive pass DVOA. So slightly in the favor of Baltimore there in terms of the pass DVOA, but it looking like they're going to have plenty of time to throw the ball. So this could be good for Rashad Bateman in this particular matchup that is going to have a little bit more time to run those routes and get open. I think he's used more as the intermediate to deep guy in this particular offense. The interesting part, though, comes from the run blocking. We see Baltimore with the huge favorites. They're number 9 in run blocking, Vegas 15th in stopping the run. Slight favor there for Baltimore. And then 5th in run DVOA for Baltimore's offense, 25th for run DVOA and Vegas's defense. This is telling me it's a Derrick Henry week in Baltimore. Don't be shocked if he has the 25 to 27 carries in this for 130 yards and a touchdown or 2. Do like him potentially as a slate breaker, but I do believe he's going to be extremely popular in DFS this week. Don't want to be fading him too much according to the slate. If you do so at your own peril, he could break the slate in this particular week 2 matchup on the main slate. All right, getting into the 9th game on the slate here, 41 Vegas game total, so a half a point down. We have the Jets actually as 3.5 point road favorites, 22.25 team implied total for them. Tennessee 18.75 team implied total. Jets 9th best on the slate, Tennessee at 21st best on the slate. Offensive pass protection for the Jets, number 1, Tennessee 20th in generating a pass rush or getting after the quarterback via sacks. That's flip-flopped in the DVOA. Jets 21st, Tennessee 6th. That could do with the week 1 matchups. Tennessee played Chicago, who was just horrendous. The Jets did play San Francisco, who looked very good against them. So keep that in mind. Could be the 1 game sample size thing here, but I do think the Jets should be able to pass the ball pretty effectively against Tennessee. The run game is a little bit more concerning for me. Tennessee got some studs up front in that middle of the line. I think a lot of people are going to struggle to run against Tennessee. The Jets here might be included because they are 31st and 27th in those run blocking and run DVOA categories, while Tennessee in the top 10 in both green versus red matchups here in the run side. Unfortunately for the Jets. So number 4 in run stopping for Tennessee, number 9 in run DVOA for Tennessee. This is probably going to be bad for any sort of rushers in the Jet side. So Breece Hall, if he's going to have a big game, it's going to be through the air. Otherwise, don't see him doing too much on the ground in terms of efficiency. He could get there with volume, but I don't think he's going to have a ton of efficiency. He is the one guy who 4.39 speed at his size. He is very explosive. He could take one to the house if he does get a crease. I just don't know if I see that happening in this matchup with that defensive front. Getting onto the Tennessee side, they may find themselves with some time to throw, but again, one week sample size here. 22nd in offensive pass protection for Tennessee. The Jets, second to the worst at 31st in the adjusted sack rate. And then Tennessee offensive pass DVOA actually at 28th. The Jets 24th, slightly in the favor of the Jets here. Telling me that Tennessee may have a little bit of time to throw the ball, but in terms of being efficient with it, perhaps Tennessee sees themselves be a little bit more effective per play than they were against that Chicago Bears defense in week 1 with the Jets at that particular spot. But this is a brutal 2-week spread here for Tennessee, getting Chicago's defense followed by the Jets. I do think Tennessee continues to struggle on offense against this Jets team, regardless of what this says. The run stopping, Tennessee 11th in run blocking, the Jets number 1 in stopping the rush. Kind of find that surprising considering what San Francisco did. May have to go look at those numbers quick. And yeah, good thing I was aware of that. I went to go look, and FTN, as far as when I pulled the data on Tuesday, hadn't updated from the Monday night game. So we did do that update. The Jets 30th in stopping the run, Tennessee 12th in offensive run blocking, the Jets 24th in run DVOA, Tennessee number 7 in offensive run DVOA. So Tennessee should be able to run the ball against the Jets based off of this matchup. I think they're going to be better off trying to run the ball here instead of passing it against the Jets. I do see Tajay Spears maybe getting involved in here too with a little bit more pass catching role than we've perhaps seen in week 1. So watch out for that. I think he's a sneaky play this week after a disappointing week 1. And the 10th game on the slate, one that has perhaps been bet down since the Jordan Love injury. We do have a 40.5 Vegas game total for Indianapolis heading into Green Bay as 3-point road favorites here. Indianapolis 21.75 team implied total. Green Bay 18.75 team implied total. Good for 13th and 21st on the slate respectively. Again, that's a Vegas game total of 40.5. Indianapolis 3-point road favorites. Indianapolis 25th in offensive pass protection. Green Bay 22nd in the defensive pass rush. Indianapolis 12th, in offensive pass DVOA. Green Bay 26th in defensive pass DVOA. So expect to be pretty effective here passing the ball for Indianapolis. Maybe finding themselves with a little bit more time than they were perhaps used to after week 1. The run blocking, though, 25th for Indianapolis, 7th for Green Bay's run stopping. And then Indianapolis, number 11 in run DVOA, while Green Bay at 17. This is slightly in the favor of Indianapolis. Seems a little bit neutral to me. I think Indy maybe passes the ball in this pretty effectively. If they're going to score touchdowns, though, it probably comes on the ground via Jonathan Taylor or Anthony Richardson. Not sure if I trust any pass catchers in this Indianapolis offense in this particular matchup. Maybe my best option would be A.D. Mitchell, actually, I think is your best option on that Indianapolis side. He did just get missed on a few passes where he could have had long touchdowns. Maybe he connects on these in week 2. Getting into the Green Bay side, number 10 in offensive pass protection. Indianapolis number 4 in the pass rush. Green Bay 17 offensive pass DVOA. Indianapolis 19. Pretty much a wash there for Green Bay. They do have a new quarterback, Malik Willis. Pretty much an avoid for all DFS for me on that offensive pass protection side or offensive passing side for Green Bay. The run game, though does look very effective. Indianapolis 32 in both categories there. Absolutely getting swamped from the looks of it there. Green Bay 6th in the run blocking, 3rd in the run DVOA. I'd expect a heavy dose of Josh Jacobs in this to try to slow the game down, prevent Indy's explosive offense from being on the field. I think that's going to be how it plays out. If there's any one viable person from Green Bay, it's going to be Josh Jacobs in this matchup. Getting towards the bottom of the slate here, Chargers and Carolina. We do have the Chargers actually as 5-point road favorites going into Carolina on a 39 Vegas game total. That means the Chargers, 22 points for their team implied total. Carolina at 17, 24th best on the slate here, on the main slate. Chargers at 11th best on the main slate. So offensive pass protection, Chargers number 2, Carolina 24th in the pass rush category. So suggestive that there's not going to be a lot of sacks on the Carolina end. Pass DVOA also slightly in the favor of the Chargers at 18, Carolina 25th. Would be okay with the pass game here. I think they're going to have a lot of time. This could actually be a rare Quentin Johnston DFS week. Just keep that in mind. He is a deep dart throw in DFS. I think he could actually produce some results in this matchup against Carolina. I do like the run game as well here. So the Chargers 20th and Carolina 28 in stopping the run. And then offensive run DVOA for the Chargers, number 10, Carolina 23rd. Especially if Chargers are going to be up big in this, I do expect J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards to take a big role here, especially if we see some Quentin Johnston magic, in the pass game, get them up early. We could see those guys finishing it out and being super successful, which is probably part of the reason why this Vegas game total is so low. They will run out the clock there pretty quickly running the ball. Carolina just read across the board for their offensive stuff. 28th, 31st, 30th, and 32nd for offensive pass protection, offensive pass DVOA, offensive run blocking, and offensive run DVOA. Chargers have 3 green spots, so expect their defense to do very well. Pick them up off the waivers already this week in a lot of my leagues where I just stream defense. Defensive pass rush for the Chargers, 6. Defensive pass DVOA, 8. Very in line for a lot of sacks and then opportunities for Bryce Young mistakes there. Defensive run stopping is their worst at 14, but their run DVOA number 2 versus Carolina's 32 in the run DVOA. On offense, I just think Chargers are going to dominate in this one. You don't want any Carolina Panthers in your lineup. Just avoid them at all costs. Luckily for them, their pace of play is super fast, number 1 in neutral situation, and overall pace of play, so good for them. All right, and worst game on the slate at 38.5 Vegas game total here. Seattle heading into New England. Seattle 3.5-point road favorites. A lot of road favorites in this particular week, so interesting there. Seattle 21 points for their team implied total, number 14 on the slate. New England 17.5, 23rd best on the slate. Getting into the offensive pass protection for Seattle, 15th. New England 9th at generating pass rush. That is the adjusted sack rate. They might be able to get after Geno here. The pass DVOA, though, pretty good for Seattle. Top 5 at number 5. Unfortunately for them, New England's good in that category too at number 7. So kind of a wash for their pass game. It's going to be a studs eat type situation, and we know Seattle's got quite a few people in the pass game that are very good, and they might actually need to lean on this because Kenneth Walker is doubtful for this game to suit up. So keep that in mind. He's got an abdominal issue. It might be the Zach Charbonnet show this week. He's probably going to be super heavy, especially in cash games, which you don't care about the rostership percentage as much. But getting into the run blocking side, Seattle 27th. Not very good, but they might be a little bit better than you'd expect. Again, this is 1 game sample size, but New England 29th in stopping the run, 29th in run DVOA. Seattle 14th in run DVOA. If you expect Seattle to be up big, the studs are going to be fine in Seattle's pass game, and then Charbonnet maybe being successful or more successful than you'd expect behind that Seattle offensive line in this particular matchup. He might be a good play in DFS yet. In tournaments, though, I'm probably going to avoid Charbonnet. I'm not sure if he's a higher likelihood to just not have a monster game against this New England team. We did see them shut down Cincinnati's offense in week 1, though Zach Moss did score a touchdown against them, and I feel like they have similar skill sets between him and Charbonnet. So play him at your own risk. I wouldn't be discomforted by being underweight on him compared to the field in large field tournaments. I think he's going to be popular just because Kenneth Walker's out. Seattle versus New England, they're going to say Seattle's going to be up big. He's going to get tons of volume, but I just don't see that ceiling in a tournament setting there for him. Could be proven wrong, but we'll see. New England side, 3rd in offensive pass protection. Seattle not very good at getting after the quarterback, 24th. But they are number 2 in pass DVOA, so they were very effective there. New England 13th in offensive pass DVOA. So interesting aspect there. Even though New England was under pressure the highest, they weren't taking a lot of sacks in situations where you wouldn't otherwise expect it. But kind of suggestive. They might have some time to throw, but they're not going to be very efficient with their actual passes. The run game looks to be even worse, though. Seattle green on both options on defense at number 5 and number 3. New England number 11 and number 16. So that DVOA matchup, Seattle 3 on defense, New England 16 and the run DVOA in offense. I would say New England run game is an avoid in this particular matchup. If you got somebody better than Stevenson and especially Gibson in this particular week, I wouldn't be too discomforted yet again to shy away from the run game here in New England. All right, I think that does it for the main slate. Let's get into the island games. It's like we got one more. We got number 13 on the slate, Pittsburgh at Denver. Forgot about this disgusting game, 36.5 game total. Worst one on the slate here. We have Pittsburgh, 2.5 point road favorites yet again here. 19.5 team implied total for them. Denver 17. Pittsburgh, even though they're the favorite, 19th best team implied total on the slate. Denver at 24. All right, getting into the Pittsburgh side, pretty evenly matched there in the sack rate. Offensive pass protection 19, defensive pass rush 17. Pass DVOA for Pittsburgh 20, Denver 28. It does sound like Justin Fields is going to play this particular game, so keep that in mind. Offensive run blocking for Pittsburgh 21, Denver 6, and stopping the run. Run DVOA for Pittsburgh 26, Denver 18. Both of those heavily in the favor of Denver for the most part. I wouldn't expect a great game from Najee Harris, off of the one game sample size, or Jaylen Warren. I wouldn't expect great games from them, so keep that in mind. Pass game, go at your own peril. George Pickens, pretty much the only guy that you'd be interested in. Freiermuth, not much of a ceiling for DFS purposes, I believe. Getting out on the Denver side, they're actually 7th in offensive pass protection, which is the adjusted sack rate. Pittsburgh 17th, despite getting after Kirk Cousins last week, which is where the pass DVOA comes into play. Pittsburgh number 9, Denver 29. Do not be shocked if Pittsburgh scores 2 touchdowns in this against Bo Nix. It sounded like he looked pretty bad, and there was several interception opportunities that were just not capitalized on last week against him. I don't think Pittsburgh makes that same mistake in their opportunities, and based off of this, they could produce, some pretty solid results in that end. Denver's run game 28th and 30th, not good. Pittsburgh 19th and 20th in stopping the run, so that's pretty heavily in the favor of Pittsburgh. Don't expect a run game very good from Denver. Pass game could struggle even more mightily than that. Pittsburgh, I do see winning this matchup despite them also not having great offensive matchups. So this is an all-around avoid for DFS purposes. If I'm grabbing one person, it's maybe Pittsburgh defense or George Pickens. All right, and now we truly get into the island games. This is Chicago going into Houston. Houston 6.5 point home favorites as of Friday afternoon. This is Sunday Night Football, 45.5 Vegas game total. Houston 26, Chicago 19.5. Getting into the Chicago side, bad week 1 for them. They're 12th in offensive pass protection, but 27th in pass DVOA. Houston, number 8 in defensive pass rush, so able to get some sacks. 12th in pass DVOA, heavily in the favor of Houston here in that pass DVOA. So maybe we see Chicago struggle again in the pass game. We'll see. The run blocking is a little bit worse than that, though. Run blocking number 31 and 25 for Chicago, so that's pretty bad. Houston 8th and 21st against the run, so Chicago might struggle in this one to move the ball yet again. Is basically suggesting that you're going to want to pick Houston to win this matchup and probably cover that spread based off of this defensive matchup. This is a situation where Houston's defense is actually in play in an island game with high variance, so don't be shy about grabbing a Houston player. And if Chicago's not going to be scoring very many points, you're probably going to want some person who's just racking up some PPR points. That could be DeAndre Swift, especially if you think Houston's getting after the quarterback. It sounds like Keenan Allen questionable. He would be the one person from Chicago I would be interested in, should it get to that point. DJ Moore obviously in play as well, but pretty much no one else from Chicago, and certainly don't want Caleb Williams in an island game based off of this. The Houston side, 28th in offensive pass protection, Chicago 12th in the defensive pass rush, Houston 15th in the offensive pass DVOA, Chicago 5th in the defensive pass DVOA. So both of those heavily in the favor of Chicago. We could see Houston struggle in the pass game, which is also very interesting, especially for an island game where a lot of people are going to be attacking that Houston offensive side. The run game, though, looking very juicy. Number 1 in run blocking, number 1 in run DVOA. We saw them absolutely obliterate in week 1. Mixon had a monster game. Chicago 21st and 28th in stopping the run. To me, this looks like a Mixon type of game. Mix in a few pass catchers at your peril. Avoid the quarterbacks in this particular matchup and go with Houston's defense potentially, and maybe their kicker as well, if you think some of the run game stuff will stall them out, or the pass game stuff will stall them out on third down while they're driving in. But that's really how I'm going to attack this island game. It's going to be Mixon in my captain spot, or Houston's defense in my captain spot, and then trying to fill in the rest from there. But I don't think you're going to need a ton of the high-end options in this in order to be successful or win this particular slate or island game matchup. And last but not least, Monday Night Football, Atlanta in Philadelphia. So Philadelphia 6.5-point home favorites, 47 Vegas game total, giving Philadelphia 26.75 team implied total, Atlanta 20.25 team implied total. Atlanta's offense 15th in pass protection, Philly 23rd in the pass rush. Slight favor there for Atlanta. Pass DVOA though, Atlanta 26, Philadelphia 17. Again, Atlanta playing Pittsburgh, that could be part of it. Maybe they'll be a little bit more successful against this Philadelphia defense. It was really bad against the pass last year, but they did address it in the draft this year. Run blocking though looks really juicy for Atlanta. Bijan Robinson, especially in an island game, is going to look good here. 14th in run blocking, 13th in run DVOA. Philadelphia 27th in stopping the run, and 30th in the run DVOA. Again, Bijan Robinson looking like the best option for Atlanta in this particular island game matchup. Now getting on the Philadelphia side, we have them 11th in offensive pass protection, Atlanta 14th, pretty even. Philadelphia pass DVOA at 8, Atlanta pass DVOA at 14. Again, this is more of the studs eat scenario. I think A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are the two that you're going to want, obviously, in the pass game. Looking at the run game, Philadelphia actually 26th in run blocking despite the huge game from Saquon Barkley last week. 17th in run DVOA. Atlanta actually 12th in stopping the run and 7th in defensive run DVOA. I would focus my efforts towards that Philadelphia pass game, getting Bijan Robinson on the Atlanta side, and then going from there. I think you're going to have expensive players. You're going to need some cheap options to fill out the rest of that. So Atlanta, we did see against Pittsburgh, Ray McLeod. He also does return kicks. He's a cheap option. And then Philadelphia, I'm not sure who you're going to sneak in there, but maybe try to find a cheap pass catching option. I don't have access to the stuff that Dwayne McFarland does, but I believe the rookie pass catcher Johnny Wilson was on the field, and if Philadelphia is going to be passing the ball better than they're going to be running the ball, we could see him with an end zone opportunity in a game with high variance on an island matchup. Not the end of the world to pick up somebody that cheap. All right, that's going to do it for week 2, first one of the 2024 season. Thanks for sticking it all the way through here. As if you haven't already, subscribe to the Adjusted Line Play Report. I always appreciate that. Keep on watching those views. I'm getting closer to the YouTube partnership. We're 70-ish some subscribers away from hitting the 500 mark needed. And then I do need some hours watched. So I need to average just under 9 hours per day watched. Right now I'm probably averaging somewhere around 3. So hopefully these Adjusted Line Play reports do get a little bit better and get me some more hours watched. and hopefully provide some value. Hopefully these provide some value to you as well. That's really the ultimate goal here. I'm always going to provide this stuff for free to you guys. I get paid enough at my day job that I don't need to be asking money for any of this stuff. So I'm doing all this stuff for my own benefit. I figure I may as well send it out to you guys as well. So hope you enjoy. If so, subscribe. Make sure you watch those videos. Help me out as well. Have a good one. Let's go win some money together, folks. Peace.